Good morning to folks that are joining. We're going to give people a few minutes to get signed in. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second installment of the House Bill 1605 webinar series. We appreciate y'all's patience as we got this second one scheduled. We were originally scheduled for last fall and had it bump to now where we are in um, today, March 8th. Before we get started, we'll do a quick agenda and FYIs for this morning. So today we're going to be covering a bit of background on House Bill 1605, as well as the teacher planning and non-instructional duties portions of the bill, and then also get into some FAQs and allow for a chance to folks to submit questions through the Q&A feature. Which brings us to our first announcement there on the right. So if you do have a question, you can look at the bottom of your window this morning where you'll see the chat, a raise hand, and a Q&A. You can click on the Q&A button to submit a question. Some folks on my team are working in the background to try and answer those as they come in. If we do not get your question today, don't fret. We'll be working diligently to get those posted on our FAQ landing page and answer them to the best of our ability. Some I might be able to answer live today, but others we will certainly follow up with. Secondly, we will have a recording. So this recording that we're doing right now, as well as the slides, will be posted to the TEA website. This will likely go up early next week. So we'll share them as soon as we can, but just want to make people aware that we are recording so that if you or a colleague aren't able to see the whole time or missed, we'll have that up for you on our House Bill 1605 landing page. And then finally, if you have any additional questions or just need more information, you can always reach out to our instructional materials email address at instructional.materials@tea.texas.gov. And we also have our House Bill 1605 landing page. So with that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Colin Dempsey. I am the Division Director for the District Operations, Technology, and Sustainability Supports Division here in the Office of School Programs at the agency. My team and I are responsible for among other things, the instructional materials technology allotments, technology platforms like TEA Learn and the Texas Gateway, as well as the new instructional materials review and approval process set out in House Bill 1605. We also manage EMAT and most procurement pathways for districts to get instructional materials. And happy to be with you all this morning. So a quick orientation, if you are new to House Bill 1605, this webinar is the second in a series which covers topics related to the bill. The recording of the past webinars are available on our landing page. QR code is on the screen. And on that page, you'll find a central source of information for agency timelines and other pieces of the legislation that are most impactful to school districts and other public stakeholders. I'll also say here that at the end of today's session, we have a short survey, and we ask that y'all do complete it. One of the questions is, what are the other topics you'd like to see as part of this series? And that helps us to prioritize the next sessions coming up. So again, more of these webinars to come on different topics in the next couple of weeks. But please visit our 1605 landing page if you haven't done so already. To get the latest on the implementation of this bill. So again, House Bill 1605 was passed during one of our sessions for the 88th, so the first 88th, the regular session, and was signed into law in 2023. And the bill makes changes to the review and approval of instruction materials, as well as addresses several topics for teacher time. And that's kind of what we're going to cover today. So before the 88th legislature, the governor called for the convening of a teacher vacancy task force. And one of the themes that that task force identified was as a way to keep teachers in the classroom and to support teachers would be to provide access to and support for high quality instructional materials. And this is one of those themes that the legislature leaned on in order to develop House Bill 1605. And the sections of statute that you'll see today really come out of this report. And I think one of the quotes here is that access to quality materials reduces the amount of time teachers spend searching for and curating those materials. And with support for implementation, high quality instructional materials lead to improved outcomes for students. And so along with that teacher vacancy task force work and that report, we also hear the agency have been piloting instructional materials out in the field as part of the T-Class initiative and now the LASSO grant initiative and the CRIMSI program. And this is what we've been hearing from teachers over the past 3 years as we've been developing those materials. And so teachers are telling us that they love having all of their materials right in front of them and a teacher guide that's well organized, especially having these materials accessible to them. They're not having to spend time searching for activities or coming up with lesson plans when they have the structure of those in a set of high quality instructional materials. And we know, of course, that teachers are the single most important in-school factor impacting student outcomes. This is a graph we like to share around the efficacy of a teacher and their outsized impact, right, on student outcomes. And so we know that if we can support the highest lever for student success, being teachers in the classrooms, that we're definitely on the right path. And so when you think about that and know that a teacher's time is currently packed, right? Our teachers are doing tons of things. And one of those things is searching for or developing instruction materials on their own. And so this graphic was from our most recent annual report, where we have data that shows teachers are spending 7 hours per week developing instruction materials, but only have 3.75 hours per week for planning in their school master schedule. And, when are they doing that? Well, then they're going home and or working late to try and get those materials together for implementation in the classroom. And I think all of these factors are things that the legislature considered when crafting these particular sections of House Bill 1605. And we know that when looking at examples of student work, especially here in Texas, that a lack of high quality instruction materials to start with can lead to unintended consequences of lower rigor inside of classrooms. So as teachers are searching for those materials or developing those materials, it can be that the lessons aren't being designed at the correct grade level. And that's what this national study examined, and then TEA reproduced that study and found a very similar percentage of lessons were not at grade level in classrooms. And again, this really drives home the need for high quality instructional materials because they can help solve for this issue. And so again, taking all of that, that was the inspiration of the lawmakers for this bill, particularly these sections around protecting teacher time. So the findings from the teacher vacancy task force, and with this data, they charged forward in the 88th legislative session. And so one of the first changes that House Bill 1605 made to Chapter 31 of our Education Code, which is about instructional materials, is they expanded the definition. And so when we say instructional materials here at the agency, what do we mean? So an instructional material means content that conveys the essential knowledge and skills of a subject in the public school curriculum through a medium or a combination of media for conveying information to a student. The term includes three parts. First, material used by a teacher, including a lesson plan, an answer key, grading rubric, and/or unit plan. Second, materials used by a principal or a campus instructional leader to support instruction. Here you could think about years at a glance documents, scope and sequence documents, right? That would help an instructional leader know the pacing that's happening in a campus or across a district. And then finally, the materials used by students, right? So student activity books, supplementary materials. This definition is quite broad. Magnetic media is still in this definition. They didn't remove that, but all of these things are considered instructional materials and will apply and be relevant for our conversation here about the new sections of Education Code for teacher protections. And so of these instructional materials, House Bill 1605 also defined three categories. And the categories represent the coverage that an instructional material would have of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills or other state standards. And so the first category is full subject tier 1. And these are instructional materials designed to, if implemented as designed, provide a student with mastery of the essential knowledge and skills adopted by the State Board of Education for a certain subject and grade level. So this is covering the entire subject and grade level. An example might be a set of materials meant to teach the entire year's worth for third grade math. And would not require supplementation, meaning that this set of instructional materials doesn't need extra things from the teacher or from the student in order to get the student to mastery on those knowledge and skills. The second category is partial subject tier 1 materials. And instructional materials in this category are designed, if implemented as designed, to provide student with mastery in a portion of the TEKS and for a certain subject and grade level. So instead of covering, for example, all of the student expectations inside of kindergarten reading language arts, a partial subject could be just the phonics or just the handwriting or just the spelling TEKS. So a partial subject set of instructional materials covers a portion of the TEKS in a particular subject like phonics and grade level, like phonics in grade K. And then the third category of instructional material defined in the bill is instructional material designed to assist, supplemental, sorry. And these are materials designed to assist in the instruction of one or more of essential knowledge and skills for a subject. And so you'll note that this is not limited to a grade band. And it's also not limited to a particular portion. It's just a supplemental material can support the instruction of one or more TEKS in a particular subject. So this might look like a math program that students use during tier 2 time or tier 2 style interventions to work through problems. This could look like a set of spelling words that weren't part of a full subject tier 1 curriculum. But these are the three categories of instructional materials. And the one on the left is what the teacher protections define as being required in order for a teacher to not have to turn in lesson plans, which we'll get here in a second. So again, what are the components of a full subject tier 1 set of instructional materials? And that would be in the middle there, materials that students use to learn and practice, as well as the materials that teachers and instructional leaders use to teach those things. And so when we talk about here in a minute, the the components necessary for a teacher to have on hand in order not to require a supplemental duty agreement. They would need these things in the blue circle, right? Planning guides, research based on research-based teaching ideas, detailed and flexible lesson plans, aligned visuals, all of the assessments, so that teachers and students could work towards mastery in that particular grade level and subject. What does that look like in practice? So on the screen is an example of our current open education resource set of materials, which includes, this is, I think, sixth grade math is where I pulled this one from. But this would be, if the materials were adopted by your district, a teacher would not be asked to create additional lesson plans because they have these materials included, which are answer keys, grading rubrics, those things defined in the definition of a tier 1 set of instructional materials. All of that is relevant context for what House Bill 1605 laid out. And I think the one that we'll focus on today is here in the yellow, which is teachers cannot be required to use their protected bi-weekly planning time to create initial instructional materials unless there's a supplemental duty agreement with the teacher. And so again, there's lots of things in House Bill 1605, but today's session, we'll focus on these teacher time protections. And before we get into that, this is our disclaimer that the information included in this deck is provided as informational guidance only. The Texas Education Agency does not provide legal advice to the field, and school systems should therefore consult with their own legal counsel regarding local implementation of the requirements of House Bill 1605 and associated legal requirements. And in today's presentation, I'll cover the sections of education code that were modified by the bill, which are Chapter 11, which pertains to school districts and the powers and duties of a board of trustees of independent school districts in terms of restricting written information for a teacher, as well as Chapter 21, which covers this supplemental duty contract outlined in the bill. So let's look at the text. So on this screen, you'll see some highlighting and some underlining. The words that are underlined on this screen represent wording that was modified by House Bill 1605. So everything that is there on the screen already existed except for that first part of section A6 and A-1. So I'm going to read this quickly, which is the Board of Trustees of each school district shall limit redundant requests for information and the number and length of written reports that a classroom teacher is required to prepare. A classroom teacher may not be required to prepare any written information other than the following list. 1, any report concerning the health, safety, or welfare of a student. 2, a report of a student's grade on an assignment or exam. 3, a report of a student's academic progress in class or course. 4, a report of a student's grades at the end of each grade reporting period. 5, a report on instructional materials. 6, subject to subsection A1, which was the addition by House Bill 1605. Teachers are now required to provide a unit or weekly lesson plan that outlines in a brief and general manner the information to be presented during each period at the secondary level or in each subject or topic at the elementary level. And then the other requirements there. So what is the exception? The exception the legislature added to this section of statute is that a unit or weekly lesson plan that is included in instructional material as defined by the definitions we just shared, tier 1, and adopted by the local board of trustees at which the teacher is employed is sufficient to satisfy the requirement to prepare written information described in A6. So in layman's terms, this bill helps to protect teacher planning time by reducing redundant work if the district has already adopted instructional materials that include unit or weekly lesson plans as defined by Chapter 31, section 31002, meaning instruction materials used by the teacher include those lesson plans, answer keys, grading rubrics, or unit plans. And so when thinking about whether or not, in an attempt to rather save time for teachers, not having them duplicate lesson planning or outlines of unit plans if that already exists in materials that the district has adopted. This slide is an overview of Education Code Section 214045, Planning and Non-Instructional Duties of Teachers. This was amended by House Bill 1605. You can see a lot more underlining here, and indicates the underlining that was formatted text. And so in this one, I'll read that, which is a school district may enter into a supplemental agreement with a classroom teacher under which the teacher agrees to perform a duty relating to initial lesson plan design or instructional material selection that is not a duty generally, one, anticipated to be performed during the instructional day, and two, assigned to all classroom teachers of the same subject and grade level under those teachers' employment contracts. B, a school district may not require a classroom teacher for a foundation curriculum course to spend planning and preparation time, which the teacher is entitled under section 21404, creating or selecting instructional materials to initially cover, that's a key point, initially cover the applicable essential knowledge and skills for the course, unless the teacher has entered into a supplemental agreement described by subsection A. This subsection may not be construed to prohibit a classroom teacher from choosing to spend their planning time and preparation time creating or selecting instructional materials. And finally, C, a supplemental agreement between a school district and a classroom teacher described by subsection A, under which a teacher is assigned responsibility for a greater number of duties unrelated to providing instruction other than full-time teachers of the same grade level in the district, must explicitly state each of the teacher's duties unrelated to providing instruction. So again, this new statute generally restricts districts in requiring specific classroom teachers to perform duties relating to initial lesson plan design and instructional material selection during their planning and prep time that are not already outlined in their contract in the same subject for teachers in the same subject or grade level, unless the duties are included in a supplemental agreement. If such an agreement is reached, it must explicitly state the duties to be performed that are unrelated to providing instruction. So as an example, it would have to state that they are participating or required to complete initial lesson plan design. The next section, we're going to look at this section 21404. So when we say, when the bill says spend planning and prep time, which a teacher is entitled, that comes from section 21404, which we'll get to. I do want to note that this section 214045 does apply beginning with the coming school year, the 24-25 school year. So what do we mean by initial lesson plan design? I think we just got a question in the Q&A around that and defining it. A school district may not require a classroom teacher for a foundation curriculum to spend planning and prep time creating or selecting instructional materials to initially cover, meaning initial lesson plan design is a teacher creating lesson plans from scratch. So they are taking standards and they are coming up with key points and aligning student activities or aligned assessments to those standards. Selecting instructional materials, classroom teachers selecting the lesson plan materials and resources for the initial design of the unit or lesson. For example, not limited to these, but identifying or evaluating a text or resource to use as part of a lesson, creating or collating text excerpts from various sources to use in a lesson would be considered selecting or initial selection of instructional materials. The statute doesn't restrict a classroom teacher from using their planning time to create or select instructional materials, but rather prevents a district from mandating the use of that time for those activities. If a teacher wants to, on their own time, work through lessons or do that during their protected time, they are welcome to. This bill does not prevent them from doing so. But if the district is going to require either of these tasks, then they can either enter into a supplemental duty agreement with the teacher or allow for more time during the school day beyond the 450 required minutes across the 2 weeks for a teacher to complete these tasks. So what do we mean by protected planning time? Texas Education Code 21404, planning and prep time states, each classroom teacher is entitled to at least 450 minutes within each 2-week period for instructional preparation, including parent-teacher conferences, evaluating students' work and planning. A planning and preparation period under this section may not be less than 45 minutes within the instructional day. During a planning and prep period, a classroom teacher may not be required to participate in any other activity. So again, the planning and prep time under the section is protected. And if a teacher is going to be asked to do initial lesson plan design, as we just defined, during this time, and they're not given other planning time beyond this 450 minutes every 2 weeks, then a teacher will need to enter into a supplemental duty agreement with the district. So those are the new and already existing statutes, but a question that we get following that as well, how are these enforced? So local school boards are responsible for ensuring the requirements of the Texas Education Code are followed within their school systems. In addition, the agency provides oversight of those requirements. If a school district were to violate section 11.164, which is the one around submitting lesson plans, and 21.40.45, which is the one around protecting planning time and initial lesson plan design. As with any other sections of the code, a teacher could file a grievance following the district's grievance procedures. And if the board denies the grievance, an appeal to the commissioner could be made under Education Code 7.057. If a violation of Education Code section 11.164 or 21.40.45 is a reason why teacher's contract is terminated, non-renewed, or suspended without pay, as with any other violation, the teacher can appeal the action to the commissioner under Texas Education Code section 21.301, and the teacher would not need to file a separate grievance in order to raise the claim to the commissioner. Separately, individuals can seek enforcement via the judicial system. So what's that all mean? First, the purpose of this new statute is to save and honor teacher time, as surfaced as a need by the teacher vacancy task force and the other research that I shared up front. The new requirement applies only to initial lesson design and only to the 450 minutes of biweekly minimum planning time to which a teacher is entitled under that section. To comply with the statute, districts have the following options. A, you can supply the teacher with the full tier 1 set of instruction materials so they aren't required to do initial lesson plan design. B, if the teacher is going to be required to do initial lesson plan design, you can give the teachers time outside of their required 450 minutes biweekly and give them more time to do so during the school day. Is an important piece there. Or C, if they're going to be required to do initial lesson plan design and a district doesn't give them time outside of their 450-minute biweekly minimum planning time to do the initial lesson design during the school day, the district must then issue a supplemental duty agreement or stipend with that teacher for that work. So I think going through statute isn't always as helpful as some practical examples. So we put together a few scenarios, which again, the disclaimer applies that these are illustrative examples and scenarios where we try to illustrate what this would look like in practice at the school district. So let's imagine scenario A. A full subject tier 1 set of instruction materials were provided. In this scenario, a district has adopted full subject tier 1 instructional materials for third grade math that include teacher-facing resources such as unit plans, unit overviews, and daily lesson plans. The district encourages teachers to use their biweekly prep time to prepare for lesson delivery by reviewing the lesson plans, internalizing the content, rehearsing their delivery, and planning for adjustments as required by individual education plans, and planning any other differentiation needs. The district provides 2 additional 45-minute prep periods a week above the 450 minutes of protected prep time, where teachers are required to do these planning activities. Is this a violation of a teacher's protected planning and prep time? In this example, no, this is not a violation of the teacher's protected planning time. Teachers in this scenario are not required to design lessons, nor select initial instructional materials from scratch at any time. Rather, they're encouraged to plan for lesson delivery or internalization during their protected 450-minute biweekly prep time. And they're given additional time where internalization activities are required. So again, the district is not requiring that internalization during the 450 protected time, 4 to 15 minute protected time. They've encouraged it, but they've also provided for an extra 45-minute prep period a week above that 450 minutes for the teacher to internalize. So in this case, a supplemental duty agreement would not be required. For scenario B, let's imagine this is a scenario where Mrs. Johnson is a 4th grade self-contained teacher and has been assigned the task of writing the lesson plans for the other 4th grade teachers at her campus. This is not a duty the other 4th grade teachers have outlined in their employment contract, and Mrs. Johnson's district has provided a year-long scope and sequence of boutiques, and a principal has asked her to develop these lesson plans aligned to the scope and sequence. Does Mrs. Johnson require a supplemental contract for this lesson planning work? In this scenario, Mrs. Johnson cannot be required to develop initial lesson plans during her protected planning time. If the district expects Mrs. Johnson to complete these duties during the instructional day, the district must either A, find additional time in the schedule for her to plan beyond the 450 minutes per week of planning time required by the statute, or B, execute a supplemental duty contract for the lesson design work. So again, the goal of the statute is to protect teacher time so that they are not expected to write lesson plans on their own time, off the clock, in order to keep up with the demands in the classroom. And so they are either provided time during the day beyond their protected planning time, or they're given a supplemental duty contract in order to account for that extra work. In order to give teachers more time, right, that involves changing the schedule often. And strategically designing a master schedule ensures students have enough time for tier 1 and supplemental instruction, and ensures that teachers have the time, the school day and year, to successfully fulfill all the things that we ask teachers to do, including planning. We wanted to take the moment to share some available resources related to master scheduling that can be found on the accelerated instruction page on our website. I think we can share the link in the chat. If not, it will be hyperlinked in the PowerPoint when we share it out. But additionally, there are resources to support strategic staffing models, which can have an impact on the time during the instructional day that a classroom teacher has available to them, if that's the route that your district is looking to go in order to avoid a supplemental duty agreement. And this one I forgot to animate the answer, so you're going to get to see it first. Mr. Puente is a 6th grade science teacher. His district has adopted instruction materials approved by the State Board of Education in the most recent proclamation. The materials provide weekly unit plans, but do not have enough detail for daily lessons. Mr. Puente has a 45-minute planning period each day with an additional planning period of 45 minutes on Fridays. He uses his additional planning time to select and create lesson materials and activities for his science students. Can the school district require Mr. Puente to select initial lesson plan instructional materials during the school day for his 6th grade science class? Yes. In this scenario, Mr. Puente has his required protected biweekly planning time, and then he also has an extra amount, that 45 minutes every Friday, as additional planning time. And so while he is creating lesson plans, initial lesson plan design, he has that additional planning time. Therefore, a supplemental duty agreement as outlined by 214045 would not be required in this particular scenario. Our next scenario, Mrs. Pham teaches 7th grade and 8th grade math, so 2 preps for this teacher. Her district provides her with instruction materials that include unit plans and daily lesson plans as part of a full set of Tier 1 instructional materials. Can Mrs. Pham be required to submit additional lesson plans? In this scenario, Mrs. Pham cannot be required to submit additional lesson plans because she already has instruction materials adopted by the district that meet the standards outlined in that 11.164A-1, meaning she already has high quality instruction materials that contain daily lesson plans. So she cannot be required to then submit a redrafting of those lesson plans to her district or to her administrator because the planning already exists. So really, the intention of this statute is to eliminate the double work if the district has already adopted locally materials that fulfill that requirement. And then finally, scenario E. Only some components of the Tier 1 materials are provided. In this scenario, a teacher chooses to use their planning time to refine and supplement the lesson plans provided by the district. So this teacher has gotten lesson plans. The district provides a scope and sequence and some instructional materials, but does not provide unit plans. The district does not provide time for this teacher outside of her protected planning time to create a unit plan. Does this teacher require a supplemental contract for lesson planning? In this scenario, a supplemental duty agreement as outlined would be required because the teacher has been given some materials, but not all. She's missing unit plans. And the district has a couple of options here. They could give this teacher time outside of their 450-minute biweekly minimum to satisfy the new statute, or they could execute a supplemental duty agreement with this teacher in order to satisfy the statute. The third option would be that they could go procure unit plans or have another administrator create unit plans and provide those to the teacher, which would also avoid having to execute a supplemental duty agreement. So I hope that these scenarios have helped provide some clarity to the rule and statute. Again, these are just illustrative and are meant to help give guidance to the field as folks are looking at contracts for the 24-25 school year, which is when these rules go into effect. So at this time, we're going to jump to the Q&A section. I've been seeing a lot roll in, so thank you all for actively participating, submitting your questions. Again, if you don't know how to do that, you can look towards the bottom of your screen. You'll see the Q&A icon there with the 2 chat boxes, and feel free to ask a question by submitting it there. And so I will jump to those FAQs here momentarily. For those that don't want to stick around for the FAQs, that's okay. But we do ask that folks go ahead and complete our exit ticket. This is, again, an opportunity for you to request what will be in our future House Bill 1605 webinar series topics, as well as give us some feedback on the type of information that you're looking for. So we'll get to the FAQs here in about 30 seconds, but I'll pause and give folks a chance to scan this QR code with their phone. And we can also drop the link into the chat. All right, so I'll stay on the screen while I start trying to answer some of these FAQs. So we have the first question is, if a district provides time above the 450 minutes, do they need a supplemental contract? And the answer is no, right? That's one of the ways to remedy is that you're providing time during the school day, right? During contract hours for the teacher to do that additional initial instructional design. and therefore would not require a supplemental duty agreement if you've made time during contract hours for that teacher to get that done. If not, then that is when a supplemental contract would be necessary. I have another question here that says, does 214045 apply to the initial selection of instruction materials district-wide, or is it specific to finding instruction materials to support lesson plans? We've had a similar question in our inbox before. I do not believe that this applies to, textbook committees, right? Or districts that are already giving a stipend to teachers or administrators to draft lesson planning, right? It's already in their contracts. And so mostly this applies specifically to initial lesson plan design at the teacher level, as long as it meets the standards of 21, 40, 45. So I think the same would be true of planning and learning communities where teachers are practicing internalization or drafting together. It's all required as part of their contract, as opposed to an extra duty. We have a related question here is, how is lesson planning different than lesson internalization? And so that gets back to this definition. I'll jump slides here. Hopefully folks have had a chance to scan the QR code. And for initial lesson plan design versus internalization. So in initial lesson plan design, a teacher is creating detailed lesson plans from scratch. Internalization means the material is already there. And the teacher is merely getting it into their head, right? They're standing and delivering, they're practicing delivering that content. They might be modifying it slightly for the needs of their students, right? If you know that you're trying to target particular student needs in your classroom, and you need to annotate your planning, that would not be considered initial lesson plan design and would be considered internalization. There is a question here about, does this apply to diagnosticians and special education personnel? I'm not sure. So we can add that to our frequently asked questions, and we'll aim to get that posted on our FAQ site. But that's a great question. We can certainly follow up. Sorry, we are just scrolling through some of the questions. A lot of these are repeats. A, a general announcement that yes, the slides will be available early next week. We will have them posted here on our House Bill 1605 webinar series page. So you can scan this QR code or visit this URL, and they should be up by Monday. It's just a matter of transcribing and making sure the captions are all spelled correctly. So that's what we'll be doing this afternoon to get that ready by Monday and posted, so that folks are able to see both the recording and the slides. I have a question here that says, without a supplemental contract and without extra planning time, could a teacher be required to submit a document like a roadmap to identify which lesson from the approved Tier 1 instruction materials they would be teaching that day? I would say no, it wouldn't require extra time or the supplemental contract because the materials already exist, right? You're not asking that teacher to go find the trade book that they should be using or to go write the lesson. You're merely asking them to, that this textbook might have 2 or 3 lessons for that unit, and it's up to teacher discretion to choose the one. So I don't believe, in my opinion, that would require a supplemental contract, but again, that will be up to interpretation with your local board and legal team. Sorry, once again, these are parsing through some of these questions. We have a question here that it says requiring internalization is acceptable under law and can be done during the teacher's 415 minutes. It can be encouraged during the teacher's 450 minutes, but it cannot be required, right? So internalization can be encouraged but not required during the teacher's protected planning time. And it would be necessary to maybe define that for some of your teachers of your expectations there. And if there are expectations above and beyond the general planning time, then that may require additional time or a supplemental duty agreement. We do have a question. These rules apply to a foundational curriculum course, and that is defined, I believe, in chapter 28 of what is the foundational curriculum. Let me pull up my notes because I want to make sure I get that correct as we are mentioning it of what is the difference. One more slide. A foundation curriculum includes English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies consisting of Texas, United States, and world history, government, economics, with emphasis on free enterprise system and its belief. So that's the foundation curriculum to where these rules would apply. We do have a question here that, well, Colin, you've shared that teachers will need, if we give them extra time above their 415 minutes, that suffices and a supplemental duty contract would not be required. But what constitutes extra planning time? The legislature did not define. So that is a bit nebulous. I think that would be something that we could go seek clarification on from the authors of the bill. But right now that is not defined. And we can't really make a recommendation there because it's not in statute. So that wouldn't be my place to do so. But we can certainly go follow up and see if we can provide more guidance to the field on that particular point. I think my team is looking through some of these. But again, if folks can jump to the slide. Take the next 5 minutes, please complete the exit ticket survey if you haven't already. And we will be following up with the upcoming House Bill 1605 webinar sessions. I know topics to come will be related to the ban on 3Qing in phonics products and K-5 reading language arts products. We have a session that we're planning now related to the new allotments inside of House Bill 1605 for instruction materials purchases, the new $40 and $20 per student entitlements there, and some other exciting topics that are going to be really relevant for districts in the next couple of months. So if you have any other questions, feel free to submit them in the exit ticket, and we will be working through the ones submitted in the Q&A to add them to our Q&A on the website over the next week. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Hope you have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.